love waking up to the news that while we were sleeping, Republicans voted at 2 a.m. to defund public broadcasting, rural radio, and emergency alerts. This isn't just NPR or PBS. We're talking about local emergency services, rural stations, Amber Alerts. They wouldn't even protect basic life-saving communications. Congress is supposed to serve us, not the sitting president. Senator Patty Murray said it best. I voted no. Call your senator.
All right, shalom, 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 shalom. Before I begin this lesson, I want to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Chakadash. Right, double honors unto my elders and apostles, great millstone, which are the men that rule well and taught us His truth. Peace, blessings, and salutations as always be to the elect. All right, and Lord's will, the title will be Order Out of Chaos. Maybe I'll change the title, maybe not. And like you just saw in the beginning of the video, the beginning of this lesson, this lady was talking about how 2 a.m., I believe it was Wednesday morning or Tuesday morning, they passed, and I have to do more research on it myself. As of right now, it's kind of just word of mouth on the internet about them passing some type of bill to where, well, essentially not passing a bill, but they defunded, not just public broadcast and stuff like that, but essentially anything, any type of local broadcasting, emergency, Amber Alerts, basically all the things that are needed for emergencies in society, which is big, man. That's not something light. That means that essentially it'll come down to it, man. Eventually, like, no 911, there will be no more 911. You ain't gonna be able to call the ambulance no more. You won't be able to call EMS. You won't be able to call the police, the firefighters, none of that, man. Ain't gonna be none of that no more. All right, sometime very soon. Okay, and they want to bring the chaos, man, because they also want to give you the order. They also want to lock it down. They also want to put wearables on everybody, C-hips on everybody. You know what I'm saying? And that's the time that we're heading into. All right. These are the things that the prophets, before us spoke about. They saw the chaos. They saw Jacob's trouble. All right. They saw the missiles. They saw these different prophecies. Okay. And, with what Trump's doing, Salakia, with what Trump's doing, with all these different things that are coming to pass, it's the perfect setup for all hell to break loose and for the government to just say, all right, in the name of safety, I'm going to initiate martial law and lock up every major city, lock down every major city. That's the time that we're heading into. But most importantly, it's judgment. It's going to bring judgment upon the wicked of our nation here in Babylon the Great, aka the 2/3 of our people, the wicked Israelites, man. Right now you got persecution on the northern kingdom. Soon it's going to be all 12 here, man. All 12 tribes will be suffering persecution. All right. But this is Micah 2:1. I'll start there. Woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds. When the morning is light, they practice it because it is in the power of their hand. Right. And these guys, these devils, man, are something else, man. They did it at 2 a.m. while all of us was, the majority of us that was asleep. They said, shit, we go do it right now. They ain't gonna be able to do nothing about it. It's 2 a.m. That's the type of world, all right, that we live in. All right, we live in a world where a bunch of Edomites whose faces you don't even know. There's never no name to who passed this bill, that bill, who made it up, who concocted it, who thought about it. None of that. They always just throw it on the president thought about this. The president just signed this bill. Like, well, who concocted it? Those things never come out, But what? They get to pass these laws without your say-so. It just goes to show that you don't actually live in the land of the free. It just goes to show that he has a fatness of the earth. This man Esau is the devil. He's in rulership right now. You see? It says, when the morning is light, they practice it because it is in the power of their hand, right? They have the power right now, and that's what they did. That's what they're deciding to do with the power. See, the people don't realize these elite, these upper elite, even the lower tier elite, like people in Congress and things like that. Bro, man, they passing these laws. They're rich enough to get away from the danger in regular society. The average person can't. They don't give a shit about, 911. Salakia, I'm at the plantation right now. I'm a little tired. But, they don't give a shit about that stuff, man. All right? They ain't worried about it. They got enough money. They got private doctors and things like that. On-call doctors, They're not worried about, things like that, man. Apparently, I heard from one of my coworkers, the weather, to some degree, is being defunded. So now the weather's inaccurate. Our weather apps are going to start being inaccurate and shit like that. Hey, we going to see, man. This dude, Trump is on a rampage, man. He is on a rampage. Okay? So, I'm going to read verse 2. And they covet fields and take them by violence, and houses, and take them away. So they oppress a man in his house, even a man in his heritage, right? They oppress everybody. That's straight up oppression, man. No more Amber Alerts. That's huge, man. So if your car gets stolen, shit, you're better off trying to get it back yourself. Or your kid. Oh man, Lord forbid, man. You driving, car gets stolen with your child in it. You ain't gonna call 911. What are you gonna do? See, that's the thing. People don't think about stuff like that because they're so used to the regular American comforts. Especially Esau, man. Esau love to call 911 on anybody for any fucking thing. What are you going to do now when there is no more 911? What are you going to do now when there is no news report? You don't know about the serial killer on the loose that was in Pennsylvania. Now he in Virginia. You don't know nothing. You don't know about how out in California something crazy is going on because the news ain't funded no more. That's huge, man. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be up to social media, all right, for you to get your news, which most of us brothers is already on that. We already getting only our news from social media because the regular news ain't telling us shit. But what? Eventually, that's when they're eventually going to just get rid of that. I wouldn't be surprised if Esau tries to defund the internet. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, let me go to Isaiah 30. I'm all right. I'm going to read down to 3 because at the end of the day, this is gonna work to the evil. His evil is gonna work towards who? Killing Jake, man. Because that's what it's all about. We're the main character. Well, really, Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, the main characters. Yahweh Shai, the star, right? But what? The wicked 2/3. All right. Hey, this is all about Israel. This whole storyline, man. All right. So when you see these evils happen, it's usually aimed to who? Israel. Persecution. When they talked about ICE raids, they didn't say any specific race at first. But we know who was it targeting. Israel. Who is it targeting now visually in the media? Israel. They ain't looking for no Germans that overstayed their welcome. Russians that overstayed their welcome. Hey, I work with some people, man, that, they're, they look like Edomites. Whether they're Jake or not, it doesn't matter. But they told me stories about how, they were, at one point when their visa expired, they didn't want to leave. They just laid low and renewed it, acted like they weren't in the country. Nobody was looking for them, though. They said, nobody's really looking for us, though, So it just goes to show, man, everything that right now that Esau is doing is aimed towards Israel. That's why the scriptures even say that they shoot in secret at the perfect, I mean, that's really going into the enchantments, but everything that Esau brings out as far as evil is really just aimed towards Israel. All right? That's why all that trust that these women and men and women and children had to Esau is going to be their shame. All right? Because you rely heavily on the news and you know what I'm saying? And soon, eventually, the government's going to stop giving out handouts and soon you ain't going to have no level of no safety, no security, no safety blanket, nothing. Isaiah 30:1, woe to the rebellious children, saith the Lord, that take counsel, but not of me, and that cover with a covering, but not of my spirit, that they may add sin to sin. Right? Now, you people have made Esau your comfort blanket, your whole trust, all of your trust, because to some degree, all of us kind of rely on Esau, because, the curse, man, that we would rely to our enemy for the one of all things. We'd go to our enemy for the want of all things, or for everything that we need, right? But see, us in the truth, us that come into the truth of Yahweh B'Shem Yahweh Shai, we've began to mentally depart to some degree. We learn not to believe everything that comes out of this devil's mouth. Obviously, we're still got to go to him for food and water and living, right? We still got to rent his homes and rent his apartment buildings, but we already have the mindset that we're going to choose Yahweh B'Shem Yahweh Shai, loyalty to Yahweh B'Shem Yahweh Shai over Esau, and the rest of the world hasn't done that. So they're going to bug out when they can't call 911 no more. See, us in the truth, we're going to stick together. We're going to pray to the Lord. We're going to fast if needed. You know what I mean? These are the things that we're going to do. All right? The rest of the world, they're through. That's why it says, woe to the rebellious children, saith the Lord, that take counsel, but not of me. And they're covered with the covering, but that's not of the Spirit of the Lord. Right? So these people are covered up with Esau's blanket. Now what? Now you're screwed, man. Because Esau, if he's defunding the news and public broadcasting and, you know, local emergency stuff, man, local emergency broadcasting systems, man, or even rural ones, man. What? Are you serious? That means if you in the boonies, you gonna be sent back to the during the time of the settlers, man. Essentially, because it's already really, you know, brothers that have grew up in the boonies know, man, you live in the countryside of things. You really learn to be self-sufficient. But Esau has somewhat brought some level of a comfort blanket even to those people, right? Because I know some farmers, especially smaller farmers, they get some type of government assistance. Well, now that they can't, what are they going to do? You know? How much more now you really are going to have to fend for yourself if you live in the countryside? Us in the city, you know, shit, man. We need the Lord, man. You know what I'm saying? You don't know what's going on. You don't know what's about to happen the next day. If you live in the city, you wake up one day, it's locked down. You're like, yo, what happened? The whole time you didn't know that the days prior was hell breaking loose on the other side of town, but you didn't know because it wasn't on the news, because there is no news. You know? This is big, man. All right? Right now, we don't see or feel the effects, but soon the criminals are going to catch on. They're going to be like, yo, there is no 911. They're going to start looting. The average people that were too scared to go looting, they're going to start doing it because there is no 911. Because that's what that all that's going to lead to. What are you going to do? You live in the, you know, especially, you know, you live far away from a hospital or some type of emergency, anything needed like firefighters. What are you going to do when you can't dial 911? You're cooked. Verse 2, that walk to go down into Egypt and have not asked at my mouth to strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh and to trust in the shadow of Egypt. Right. These people have made Egypt, you know, their refuge, their comfort. All right. You Israelites have made Esau your refuge and your comfort. Now that he's taken away those comforts, what are you going to do? You know, the scriptures say they shall lament for the teats, especially you women, man. Be troubled, you women that are at ease. That's next, man. What are you going to do when your only form of protection is going to be that man that you've been disrespecting for the last 5 years? What are you going to do? You know, because he could dip out. What are you going to do then? You know, you ain't going to call 911 for any type of emergencies. And a lot of these women, they work in these fields that are being defunded too. That's another thing, man. All right, what are you gonna do when they defund the medical facilities? Because eventually they're gonna do that too, man. You know, Trump is running amok right now, and it's beautiful, man. Prophecies is coming to pass. Let's get it. Verse 3: therefore shall the strength of Pharaoh be your shame. Right, because the scriptures even talk about eventually there ain't gonna be no work in Egypt. What are you gonna do then? Because Egypt is these people's refuge, man. See, that's the thing, man. Us in the truth, we're starting to realize. Well, we've been realized, but we're starting to slowly, you know, move into the mindset of, you know, this ain't our comfort, man. Eventually we're going to lose the job we have. You know, we're going to lose certain levels of comfort. You know, we're going to have to be more humble, you know, to the point where we're just going to reject society 100% because living in society would cause us to transgress the Lord. You know, talk about the CHIP being implemented and things like that. You know, we're going to get emotion, man. We're going to get emotion and separate even more. But these people are not doing that. You know, as soon as, you know, these things get cut, more and more comforts get cut, they're going to cleave onto the beast even harder. They're going to cleave onto Esau even harder, America, right? Therefore shall the strength of Pharaoh be your shame, and the trust in the shadow of Egypt your confusion, right? So you're all going to be ashamed, all right, because Esau eventually is not going to give you any more handouts. And then you're going to realize, oh, shit, whole time this guy was trying to kill me. He didn't actually want to feed me out of the kindness of his heart. He hates me. That's eventually what you people are going to realize, you know, because people are like, oh, we have rights. And look, the devil doesn't care. He never, because people talk about, but the Constitution, it's unconstitutional. He never cared about you in the Constitution. Oh, he wrote that for him and his buddies. You know, that's the funny thing, man. That's the thing with Esau, man. He does all these laws to really benefit himself and his buddies, you know, but people don't realize that. Okay. Isaiah 19:3, and the spirit of Egypt shall fail in the midst thereof, and I will destroy the counsel thereof. Right? So that's what the Lord is doing right now. The spirit of Egypt is failing. The enchantments ain't working on people no more, man. Back in the day, Esau would just one news broadcast the whole world. Oh, we can relax now. Even though all hell's breaking loose somewhere else, Esau's like, no, I got it under control. People believe it. Now they're like, hell no, I don't believe this guy. And then they spread what's really going on social media, right? It says that they shall seek to the idols and to the charmers and to them that have familiar spirits and to the wizards. Here's verse 4. And the Egyptians will I give over into the hand of a cruel lord, and a fierce king shall rule over them, saith the Lord of hosts. And that's exactly, that's why we believe that Trump is fulfilling this 100%, because look at what he's doing. Nothing that he's done so far has benefited anybody. The second he came into office, Israel starts catching hell. You know what I'm saying? Jake getting deported, they ain't even really deported, they probably just killing these guys, man. I'm gonna make a lesson on it, man, that that mayor, the Cuban mayor, Menasai in Miami, he went to the concentration camp. Yes, we're going to call it a concentration camp because that's what it is. All right? Alligator Alcatraz, quote unquote. And he said, yo, this is inhumane. He's talking about fighting for the people. Who knows, man? They might try to off him, man. Talking about, nah, this ain't right. Once you go against Esau's grain, boy, you Israelite too, man, they going to chop your head off, man. You know what I'm saying? So, Salakia. All right, now I'm going to get 2nd Esdras 15, man, because with all these different things, being defunded, all that's left is to defund 911, all right, or the connection to 911, so to speak, right? He might not necessarily get rid of 911, but he could defund your local broadcasting network to your cell phone, and now you can't call 911, man. What are you going to do then? What are you going to do when there is no more cops showing up to help you for and you're a victim of a crime? What are you going to do? Cause the average human ain't going to, the average person don't really know what to do in those type of situations. The average person don't even get out of their own car to change their own tire. The majority of people call AAA. The majority of people don't even know how to change a tire, man. I believe that, Countless times you see people on the side of the road, they're just waiting for AAA. Not to say that you going off for calling AAA or something like that, or to call you weak, but the point is people are used to the comforts. What are you going to do when that comfort isn't there no more? This thing are people are so used to relying on only Esau and what he has to offer. 2nd Esdras 15:15, for the sword and their destruction draweth nigh. That means it's close. And one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. So that's the type of riotous state that this place is going to be in. All right? How much more when there's no news coverage? Los Angeles is a war zone, and you don't know it, 50 miles away from the city. You don't know it because the news station that reports your local news is not there anymore because they got defunded. What are you going to do? It says swords in their hands. Yeah, that riotous state, man. You ain't going to be able to call the police because there's a man standing outside of your door trying to knock it down with a machete in his hand. What are you going to do? Or a gun. What are you going to do? Unless you got a gun, you're going to be a victim. Unless you got a weapon, you're going to be a victim. Unless you got the Lord, you're going to be a victim. Right? For there shall be sedition among men, which seditions are civil uprisings. Right? And invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes. In the course of the action shall stand in their power. With all this going on, ain't going to be nobody to stop these guys. Because it says what? They shall not regard their kings nor princes. The people of authority, they ain't going to give a shit about them. If there's no more calling the police, you think these people are going to be afraid to act crazy? They're not. It says in the course of their actions shall stand in their power. I mean, they're going to do whatever they want to do. And that's the times we're heading into with these different things happening, man. All right? You got people in LA right now. All right, and this is a little off topic, but with the raids going on, the ICE raids, they are in LA. The gang members in LA are actually standing up for for Jake that's getting kidnapped. That's really what it is. Jake getting kidnapped. The Northern Kingdom. There's gang members started out there really actually protecting Jake to some degree. That alone could if it gets really out of hand, Trump, especially if they start using guns and shit. Right now they kind of just throwing hands. If Trump wants to, he could lock it down, lock Los Angeles down for that alone, and all the other cities where he's doing raids in. Then what are you gonna do? shit, that's when people are gonna say F it. They gonna start taking to the streets. They gonna start trying to kill cops. You know what I mean? Different things like that. It says, the course of their action shall stand in their power. A man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able. Right? That's martial law. That's when the president's gonna lock it down. He's gonna send the troops to lock down the entrance and exits of cities. You know what I'm saying? Who knows, man? You might have to go through government checkpoints just to wake up and go to work. And we're gonna live in that. That's the thing. You know? It might still be a functioning society when he does that. To some degree, right? Somewhat. We might still have to get up and go to work during that time. You know, can you imagine? You get up, you gotta get up extra, if this is the case. You know, I'm not saying this is what's gonna happen, but you never know. You wake up, can you imagine you wake up, you go to work, there's a whole military checkpoint. They stop you, check your license, you know, looking in your car and shit. And you're like, what the hell's going on? You know? Because when they do military, hey, I remember I used to work in certain bases. The way they check your vehicle at the checkpoint, bro, they take you out the car, check your whole vehicle, make you open your hood, your trunk, your glove compartment, middle compartment, everything. They check the shit out your car. They bring the dog out. Can you imagine going through that just to leave your house? You know? Shit, a man shall desire to go into a city shall not be able. It ain't gonna be no more traveling in and out of state, traveling in and out your local city. You might be locked down in your own city just waiting for the Lord to deliver you. That's the times we heading into. For because of their pride, the city shall be troubled, and houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. Right? We're heading into evil times, man. You know, with Trump defunding these different things, man, it's gonna get crazy. There is no peace coming for America. That's the thing. People talking about, oh, Trump, no tax on overtime. That's not even, for one, that's not even until next year. And I think you have to make above a certain amount of money for it to count anyway. No tax on overtime and no tax on tips. And then you have to make a certain amount of overtime and tips for it to even benefit for you in your favor. You know, if I'm not mistaken. So, you know, well, you quote unquote won, but not really. You know? It says, for because of their pride, the city shall be troubled, and the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. A man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their house with the sword, and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation. Yeah, these are the different times that we're heading into. Now you ain't gonna know that there's an egg shortage, or there's a salmonella outbreak again, or an E. coli outbreak, because there is no news to turn on. There's gonna be no news to turn to anymore. You know, it's going to have to come from TikTok and Instagram. And Instagram don't even got news, man. I remember Instagram used to be not informative, but there was some level of news on there. Now you don't really see that, man. You know, now it's just straight folly. There's still a little bit of news here and there in on certain social medias. On Instagram, I mean, certain profiles still kind of show news. But it ain't like before, man. Now it's just... You know, you run into straight ignorance before you see something somewhat productive. But when the evil comes, you ain't gonna be on the news, man. You know, ain't gonna be on your local. You ain't gonna nothing local, man. What are you gonna do then? You know. It says, spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation. Yeah, what are you gonna do? You don't know there's a lack of bread. You don't know there's you know, ain't no more food coming in. You ain't gonna know. You know, that's when we're going to fully rely on Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai, the Spirit of the Lord. All right? Hey, man. That's all I wanted to bring out through the Spirit. You know, I hope this was edifying. I want to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai, Bashim Chakadash. We got to stay prayed up, man. The devil's on the prowl. He's going to bring the chaos and then try to bring the order, man. That's what it is, man. That's why he's doing these different things. You know? Because truth be told, he's not cutting these things to actually cut back on costs. This devil could print more money right now. He's doing these things so that, hey, he has more of an excuse to just have even more control. That's the thing. That's what this is all about. It's all about control and to kill Israel, you know? Because it's always, you know, a lot of ignorance on the internet. I might make a lesson on it later, Lord's will. You know, Jake's still talking about, oh, you hate me because of the color of my skin. It ain't about the color of your skin, man. It's deeper than that. You know, we're Jacob and he's Esau. He hates us because we're the chosen people and he was rejected by the Lord. Subconsciously, that's why they hate you, man. Because we're God's people and he's not. We're the people of the Lord and he's not. But nonetheless, man, this devil is bringing chaos, man, because he wants to kill Israel and he wants to take over the world, man. That's just what it is. But, hey, it ain't going to happen, man. All right, the Heavenly Father, he's going to deliver us. All right, he ain't going to kill all of us. All right, we're gonna be delivered, man. Lord's will, we're part of the elect. But hey, order out of chaos, man. That's the lesson I wanted to bring out. I hope this was edifying. Call Allah Yah Bashim Yahawashi Bashim Rakakadash. Double honors unto my elders and apostles of great millstone, which are the men that rule well and taught us his truth. Peace, blessings, and salutations as always to the elect. Shalom.